everyone. I, Antika Sen, and my co-host Pragya Gupta would like to welcome you all to today's workshop put together by Scikonnect Biopatrika. As many of you know, Biopatrika is a volunteer-run science communication platform determined to bring science to society in all possible ways, as well as to facilitate networking and increase awareness regarding fears of industry transition. Biopatrika has been doing this via publishing career stories and interviews with science professionals, entrepreneurs, and industry personnel. The motivation behind this workshop came from growing queries and concerns of academicians and early career researchers who are willing to make that big jump into the industry, but are clueless in terms of approaching recruiters. With an agenda to help you sort the confusion, we thought of directly connecting you to an expert who can guide you in finding your best suitable job. Today, Biopatrika brings to you a very special workshop, Transition from Academia to Industry, Why, When, and How. This workshop will be conducted by Dr. Surbhi Dhar from RBW Consulting. The focus of this workshop will be on transitioning from the academia to the industry in the United States and understanding the job market in the US, how to ace an interview, and other related topics.
Thank you, Ayantika. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest today, which is Dr. Surbhi Dhar, who began her career in academia with a PhD in the field of epigenetics. She continued her scientific journey with postdoctoral trainings at MD Anderson Cancer Center and Harvard University, studying epigenetic mechanisms governing DNA repair and cancer. Like many of you, Surbhi was looking to move away from the bench, but still be connected to cutting-edge science. Inspired by the Japanese philosophy Ikigai, she made her career transition into talent acquisition and has never looked back. Over the last few years, she has built teams for prominent biotech clients like Translate Bio, Rubius Therapeutics, Tectonic Therapeutic Incorporated, which has fanned the fire for talent acquisition within her. She joined RBW Consulting as a senior manager, where she has been able to fulfill her passion of making people realize their highest career potential and connecting those great minds with great companies across the US. Outside of her work, she mentors young scientists for choosing right career paths, and in her spare time, finds joy on the dance floor. Now, I'll leave the floor open for Surbhi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ayantika and Pragya. Thank you for the introduction. Really excited to be here. Thank you everyone in the audience who has joined and is hopefully joining soon. Very excited to be here and talk a little bit about the transition from academia to industry. So I'm gonna quickly share my slides here. All right, yes. Thank you so much everyone for taking the time again for joining me. I'm gonna speak about transition from academia to industry, the why, the when, and the how of it all. And I am Surbhi and I come from RBW Consulting, and what I'll do today is give you an introduction to what RBW Consulting is and a little insight into myself as well. What made me sort of transition out of academia and into the industry, and why should you consider it as well? We're gonna then do an exercise on finding your Ikigai. We'll talk about the job market and what kind of jobs are available outside of academia. And, you know, a lot of times it's about, you know, finding a job is a very daunting task. So we'll talk about how to begin and where to begin the process. And we're going to talk about interview etiquette as well. So jumping into RBW Consulting. So RBW Consulting was founded in 2007 in the UK by Nick Rapley, Andy Billingham, and Richard Warren, which is where the R, the B, and the W from RBW Consulting comes from, which I'm sure was a question on some of your minds. It certainly was on mine when I was interviewing with them. It was founded with the purpose of creating something different in an industry that was heavily weighted on just commercial gains and profits. And in the 15 years since, RBW has established itself as a reputable life science recruitment specialty company that has partnered successfully with several clients in Europe as well as in the US in securing top talent within several verticals. And to name a few, preclinical science, which is what I specialize in, clinical operations, reg affairs, quality assurance, drug safety, data science, biometrics, and health economics, and so on and so forth. We are our core values in the name of insight, integrity, and innovation, and driven every day by something we call our purpose. So I personally enjoy working here, not only because of the culture, but because this is a truly unique company. And to give you an example, we were recently recognized by the UK government for our rare disease initiative to study the mental health impact of a rare disease diagnosis on the family of patients. And I think this is the only recruitment agency I know that has been given this honor, that has even done something to this effect. So we regularly flow our profits back into the industry that we work in and serve the community that we work with. And as an example, I stand here in front of you to help you transition from an academic to an industry-based career for exactly that reason. We just want to give back to the community that we work with. We're also in the process of getting our B Corp status that holds us accountable for our impact on the world at large. And on a daily basis, I just really enjoy working with these people because they're some of the coolest cats I've ever worked with. So that's a little insight into RBW Consulting. I know Pragya has already mentioned my career journey, but a quick insight into me. I did my PhD, much like a lot of people in the audience here, from India, and studied epigenetic mechanisms in mammalian spermiogenesis. I came down to the US for my first postdoc in MD Anderson Cancer Center, published while there, and moved my career to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Harvard Medical School for my second postdoc, again studying epigenetic mechanisms in the repair of DNA and in the context of cancer. After a couple of years doing a postdoc in Dana-Farber, I realized that I did not want to have a career in academia. I did not see myself as a research professor. And that's where kind of my journey to transition out of academia really started. So I initially got into scientific editing and writing for about a year, and sort of meandered my career out of that into becoming a headhunter for biotech companies. And now I have a pretty thriving career at RBW Consulting, and I'm very happy to talk to you about that journey next. So the reason why I even thought about this transition was this little infographic that I saw back in 2014, and that was the beginning of my second postdoc at Harvard. So it's a pretty busy slide here, but back in 2014, at the start of my second postdoc, I came across this sort of infographic based on a 2012 NIH workforce report. And I'm sure maybe some of you have already seen this, but this graphic gave me nightmares, like recurring nightmares. And there's a reason behind that as to why. And there's a lot of numbers here, but what I essentially want to focus on is just a couple of things. So if you can see here, there's about 86,000 in that year, 86,000 students were doing US biology PhDs. And every year, the trend was to have another 16,000 added to that workforce. But if you look at the info on the top right, if this trend continued, less than 10% of entering PhD students will actually become tenure track faculty. Less than 10% of that 86,000 plus population is going to become a faculty. But 53% of these people ranked research professorship as their most desired career. And that got me thinking as to why that is, and where does that like sort of feeling come from. So and I think it comes a lot from what we are fed during academia. Quite a bit comes from what we are told constantly, that there is nothing outside of academia, and all you should strive for is to stay in academia and become a research professor. But then if you would go back and ask your professor the question, like, if less than 10% of the people are actually becoming academic professors, do you think the rest of the 90% are actually failures? They won't have an answer, because it's not true. You're not a failure, right? So if jobs are not available, why are we not talking about transiting out of academia and considering that as a success story? So that's kind of where my journey into this really started. And as I was struggling through this phase in my life where, I had essentially quit Harvard because I wanted to figure out what I really wanted to do, I came across this philosophy, a Japanese philosophy called Ikigai. It intersects at the center of four things: what you love doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. So, Pragya has already mentioned in my intro, I also dance outside of work, and I also like to do volunteer work outside of work. So when I started to think about various options that I could have if I didn't want to be in academia anymore, I initially thought like, okay, why not become a dancer? I love doing it. I'm really good at it. The world kind of sort of needs the art. But the question remained, am I going to get paid for it? Is this going to be a financially stable enough job for me? So when I thought about it, and I felt that because I come from another country and I am trying to lay my roots down in the US, it is very important for me to have financial stability. And that is why dancing could not be a career option or my Ikigai for me. As much as I loved it, as much as I was great at it, as much as I thought the world needed it, it wasn't financially stable enough for me to consider it. And having said that, I don't want to discourage your artistic side at all. There are enough artists that I meet on a very regular basis that I admire and deeply respect, and they have chosen that path, and they don't care so much about the financial stability, and they have become great artists because of that. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. And that could be something that could be great for some of you in the audience, but it wasn't my option at the time. And I strongly, deterred from it because of Ikigai. So another thing that I really wanted to do was to help people. And when I again thought about doing nonprofit work, it again came to the financial stability piece for me. I needed something that could be financially stable, keep me helping people, and was utilizing my brain in a way that I loved and really, really enjoyed. Of course, I came across this, thought about it, and I forgot about it. So I went into scientific editing and writing for a little bit, and I was doing it, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be, but it was fine. It was paying the bills, sure. While I was doing that, I came across this person who approached me on LinkedIn, and she had a PhD and had a boutique recruitment firm of her own. And she said, I think you'll be great at this. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know about recruitment. I don't know about what headhunting is. I've only been in academia. I don't know what the world outside of academia looks like. I don't think this is good for me. But she was convincing. So I started it just part-time because I was just not sure if I wanted to do it. And in the first month of me doing this, it was like fish to water. I just got it. It hit all the sweet spots for me. It was what I loved doing, was to give vent to my extroverted personality, interact with people and help people. I was good at it because I had the science background. I had all the acumen that was needed to become a good headhunter. And the world certainly needed it because there's a lot of growing biotech companies, biopharma companies in the US that are constantly looking for that special talent. And it is exactly for that reason that you get paid, and you get paid pretty decently, might I add. So it then became my Ikigai. So when I thought about it as an afterthought, I thought, oh, I found my Ikigai. That's what it meant. So it all came together for me, but it was like an afterthought of an exercise. It wasn't like something I came across and it just immediately happened. Obviously, it has taken me a long time to figure out what my Ikigai was because there was nobody to really guide me through that process. But and I don't expect anyone to come up with it in the next 3 minutes or anything of that nature. But I'm hoping this is somewhat of a guiding principle for someone or some of you, or maybe all of you in the audience, to decide what career you really want to take on based on your own unique capabilities. So I know this exercise was sent to you before the workshop happened. So has anyone in the audience got any thoughts they want to share around this? Did this work out for someone? Do you have any questions around this that I can help answer?
Hi, Surbhi, I'm Sinjuri. I'm a postdoc at the University of Notre Dame. And so I have been a postdoc just for 6 months, but I'm pretty sure that I do not want a career in academia and I'd like to transition. I'm just trying to gain enough experience and be in that mental state where I'm ready to really, transition. And I think I'd be interested in positions pertaining to project management, where I don't have to pipette every day at the bench, but I'm still involved with the science and I am involved in managing people who are working for the project. So I'd be part of the problem and I'd be managing the workflow and the people involved.
Great, awesome. And so thank you so much, Sinjuri, for being the first one to speak. I know it takes a little bit of courage, so congrats on that. You're definitely overcome your fears. Would you mind sharing with the audience, how did you kind of come to this conclusion that you would be a good project manager, and what kind of drew you to that, and can you kind of fit that Ikigai exercise into that?
Yeah. To be honest, I did not know that I'd want to do this. I always thought I'd be somebody who'd be, good at the bench because I've enjoyed doing bench work so far. But I've been observing some changes in my personality and what I like and what I don't like as soon as I started as a postdoc. And I also observed a shift in the role that I have in the lab as a postdoc now. So initially, it would make me a little bit insecure that, I'm not doing as much pipetting as my undergrads or the people that I am training are. But then eventually, I actually started to enjoy it. And I can see my role in how driving the thing forward, actually. What an important role that is to move the whole thing forward. I have a role in training people on the bench, but that is not as much as, driving the whole scientific process forward. And that takes up a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of organization. And I am good at being on top of people. I am responsive, I am interactive, and I'm also pretty connected to the problem. So I think it would be a good fit. I'd imagine, yeah.
Awesome. So you found something that you love. Why you love it is because you get to drive something. It seems like you really like to take charge, want to be in a leadership role. So you found what you love. And then what makes you good at it is your interaction abilities, your people skills, your organizational abilities, and again, the will to drive something forward. And then obviously the world needs it. There's enough biotech companies looking for program managers, and you will get paid for it because the world needs it, right? So there it is. You found your Ikigai, and that's how you essentially would like come to something like this. And again, it doesn't need to be too complicated. You can have multiple options of careers as well, and you can pick and choose what you want to do. It could be something that it doesn't have to be one thing, but something to constantly think about. You love it for a reason, you're good at it for a reason, and then does the world need it and will they pay me for it, right? So fine, thank you so much, Nduti. Appreciate you jumping in, guns
Thank you so much,
blazing.
Surbhi, for answering my question. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. All right, so if anyone else has any other thoughts to share, I'm very happy to pause for a minute here, see if someone has anything else to share. If not, we'll continue with the presentation. Okay, going once, going twice.
Hi.
All right, sold.
Hi, Surbhi. So right now, I'm Shruti.
Shruti, hello. Hi.
Hi. I am doing my PhD in Ohio State University. I've just started my school. I love teaching. So from the presentation that you showed, definitely teaching was one of my options right from the beginning. But looking at the challenges in the tenure track positions and the amount of income that professors earn really makes me think that whether I need to focus on going into an industry or should I focus being in academia itself, because after some point of time I just feel that academia can be boring, so it is very confusing right now. So
yeah, absolutely, and it's okay for it to be confusing, right? Like that's what this is supposed to be. It's philosophies are meant to give you something to hold on to for the rest of your life, right? So this was life-changing for me, but even when I came across it, it took me about a year and a half to like piece it all together and like come back to like, oh, that's what it meant. So I found it in retrospect, to be honest. So my goal here is not for you to figure it out on the spot, for sure. That's not going to happen, but use this as a guiding principle. I think then the question becomes whether your love for teaching is stronger than your love for financial stability. And to be fair, it's not like the teachers are not paid. Well, it's a debatable argument, but it depends on you how much you want to, feel financially secure. So I don't want to, influence that decision in any way for you. But something for you to then consider is my passion strong enough for me to be okay with the financial remunerations that I get for this job? So something for you to then like think about a little more. And if not, then where else can you actually find that joy while you do something else? So as an example, and again, like I'm not trying to see that, look at me, I'm the model for everything. No, I'm not. But I'm just sharing my life experiences, and hopefully that helps someone in the audience here. I still dance, and I still go at it like nobody's business, right? So I'm still passionate about Lindy Hop, which is a dance I picked up 5 or 6 years ago, but I've been dancing since I was, I don't know, like 2 years old, 3 years old, probably. So while I was doing headhunting and recruitment, I also continued my passion for dance. It was just not my job. I, became a performer, a competitor, a dancer. I traveled, I won competitions. I became a volunteer within my community. I did a lot of nonprofit work through that dance community and found some of my best friends through this community. And art that kind of elevates me and gives me that daily satisfaction that I'm doing something outside of work that is not that is artistic, because there is a strong artist that stays within me still, so you don't need to compromise on it fully. You can still find ways to teach if you figure out that your love for it is not enough to support you through the financial stuff, you still want the financial remuneration, you can still teach outside. You can do things like what I'm doing. You can mentor other people and scratch that itch, so to speak. Even if it's not something that's your Ikigai, that's not going to be your reason for being. So you can do everything that you want to do. So I hope that was helpful, Shruti. Okay, perfect, great, awesome. All right, well, without further ado, let's move back to the presentation. Let's talk about the job market outside of academia. We've obviously talked about we want to transition out of academia. So what are some of the options that are available to you outside of academia that could be helpful? So obviously the first thing is that you could be a preclinical or an R&D scientist. It's as simple as it gets. You still love the science. You're probably looking for a little more financial remuneration. It's not a be-all, end-all thing within academia. So you're moving out. You want to transition out of industry, but you still want to do a lot of lab work. You're passionate about the science, about the assays that you do. R&D scientists, like simple transition, no issues at all. But if you didn't want to do that, there are other options. One of them could be being an application scientist. So application scientists or technical specialists or product specialists are people who focus on one product or one assay or one instrument and work within companies and go around setting up those instruments or assays or technology within different academic labs, within different companies. So you could be an application scientist or a technical specialist. You could go into regulatory affairs. FDA is a big organization that is constantly looking for people who have PhDs. It's a government job. It's a very prestigious job. You will be constantly looking at, FDA filings from multiple companies. You'll get to know about all the cool science that people are doing before anyone else knows about it. It's all paper-based. You could do it remotely. The way to get into it is you'll probably have to take a workshop or course or two for a couple of months to get into FDA, and there's ways to do it. But this is an option that you could consider if you wanted to not be at the bench. Another option could be scientific writing and editing. It could be technical, medical writing. It could be editing as well. There's a lot of journals, publication journals that are constantly looking for scientific editors that could be doing that job. So if you're someone who loves to read papers and constantly edit papers, etc., like make notes about them, this is the job for you. Medical science liaison is, and pardon me if I've spelled liaison incorrectly. I have a feeling this is probably not the spelling for liaison, but I may be wrong. But medical science liaisons is a very up and coming field. So these people are generally PhDs, and they connect companies with clinicians or doctors. And so they kind of like are the intermediary between companies who want to develop drugs based on what the clinicians think are working within their patients. So they basically sort of bridge the gap between companies' drug discovery stuff and clinical applications. So it's a very important job. They obviously need someone who's smart enough to understand all of the big words that are thrown in this sort of intermediary steps, and that's what they're good at. To Sanjuti's point, program management is essentially something that you could be doing. You could step into it directly from academia, but preferably they do prefer people who can, who have at least a good understanding of what the drug development process would look like. So maybe spending a year or two as a preclinical scientist, understanding how the industry works, how the drug development process works, or if you don't want to do that, maybe take a course or two on program management, PMP courses, certification courses, specifically catered to biotech companies. You can take those courses and hopefully find your position into becoming a program management manager as well. Quality assurance and quality control, again, not a lot of PhDs doing this, but the ones who are PhDs are really effective in doing this because, again, the jargon is so complicated for someone who doesn't understand science. So you will obviously shine through that sort of, lot of people. Entrepreneurship is another way to go about it. You could, start up your own company. If you have something that is valuable and that you could turn into a spin-off into a company, definitely consider it. It's again like a very high risk, high reward kind of a situation. You need to be financially very stable to even dream about doing this. But there are, starter labs. There are a lot of universities that support this quite effectively. MIT is one of them that does a lot of spin-offs. A lot of universities, institutes have spin-off biotech companies that are constantly encouraging you to be an entrepreneur and start your own company. So consider it if you have something, on your mind, and go about doing it in a very intelligent, thought out, logical way, because it's definitely high risk, high reward. Patent law is another thing that you could think of. Again, off the bench, nothing to do really with science other than the fact that you will be studying patents. And it's again like a high paying job. You start off as a lower level patent reviewer, I think like a copyright person. But then if you think this is good for you and you want to progress further, then you need to get like a law degree for this. But people have done that and had very successful careers after that. And it's going to be one of the very high paying jobs if you end up doing this. So consider this as well. For those of you who are artistic within the audience, who like to paint and draw things, scientific illustration is another thing. A lot of journals are constantly looking for scientific illustrators. So, go and find that if that's what you're interested in. And obviously talent acquisition and human resources, which is what I have transitioned into. But this by no means is a comprehensive list. This is just like some of the options that are available to you if you do not want to go outside of academia and back to the bench in the industry. So outside of preclinical scientists, these are all the options you can have, and there's more. So, so there's a lot of stuff available out there. So worry not, it's all going to be good. So where to begin? And I think this is one of those things that, it's law of motion, inertia, right? Like you just like want to stay in that state of motion or state of like non-motion for a long period of time. That's how it works, right? So take action. You're gonna have to take action for this. So just remember that this is not going to be a sprint. It is going to be a marathon. And it's going to be something that is going to take some time. So just sit with it for a moment and think about it and make peace with the fact that it's not going to happen maybe on your timeline. It's probably going to take time, and that's okay. That's totally fine. So just absorb it, take your time, think about it, and accept it. Now, the next thing you can do, or the only thing that's under your control, is what action you take to achieve that goal, like to start your job hunt process, right? You've taken the first step, or probably the second or fifth or 10th step for some of you in the audience. I don't know what your journey is, but you've already taken action today by coming to this presentation. You are willing to make that change. And trust me, you're not far from making that change because you're already thinking about it. So once you kind of identify what you want to do, like let's say Sanjuti's kind of identified at least that she wants to be into program management. What's the way to like now start getting those program management positions, right? So you need to network and learn about that space. And the best way to learn is to network and talk to people who are in that space already. So talk to recruiters, talk to some of your seniors, people who have done something similar and gone into the industry. And if you don't know some people who have done something similar, gone into the industry, but you think they're really cool, connect with them on LinkedIn. Be bold. Just go add them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I think you're really cool. Would you have 15 minutes to talk to me? I really want to break into this space. What are your thoughts? Ask them if they want to be your mentor. be bold. Don't shy away from asking questions and connecting with people, and do it with multiple people too. So if you don't get a response from one person, that's totally fine. Do it with another person, and that's the way to learn about it. Go to conferences in that space. Look at local and virtual groups and join them. I joined MassAIS, which is Massachusetts Association for Women in Science. I was a mentor with them for about a year. Even though I was a mentor, I truly learned so much from everyone within that organization. And it was a constant networking opportunity for me, constantly. So absolutely, like, join groups within your community. If they're not within your community, join them virtually and see who you can connect with and learn a little more about that industry. And make Google your friend. I used to Google and YouTube everything, and be friends with those technologies because they are massively helpful. Make a checklist after that. If once you've identified this is a space, you start to network with people. Okay, what do I need to then do next? You need to make a checklist. And you guys are all smart, so I'm sure you've heard of SMART goals, but set goals for yourself. And those goals need to be specific, measurable, relatable, and time bound as well. And so think about a list of things that you need to go through before you even apply for the job. So for example, you need a really good resume. You need a really good cover letter. You need to make sure that your visa is not going to be an issue. And if it is, then what do you need to do about that? Go through some trainings. Do you need to take a training? Let's say you want to join the FDA. Do you need to take a course or something to join the Reg Affairs team there? What are some realistic timelines to hit these goals? Think about it, make a plan, and come up with a checklist. And you want to hit that checklist on those timelines. When you're feeling that you're ready, when you're feeling like, and by ready, I mean, if a job were to be offered to you within a frame of like 1 to 2 months, you would be ready to join the company. That's the time I would start like updating my LinkedIn. And in fact, you don't need to wait till that long. You can update your LinkedIn even right now. And you can highlight some keywords in the summary. And the reason why I mentioned this is like a hat tip or a trick from a recruiter. There's a lot of recruiters out there who do not have PhDs, and they don't understand, maybe they won't understand that enzyme is a protein as well. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So make as many keywords, highlight as many keywords in your summary as you can, so a recruiter can actually find you. So think about that, and update your LinkedIn profile. Feel free to look at my LinkedIn profile. It has a little summary on it that tells people about me, about what I do, and makes me look a little interesting. So feel free to use that as a template, but definitely put keywords in your searches. And then once you're kind of ready, again, a month or two away from actually accepting a job and starting it, change your LinkedIn profile to open to work. And you will have a flurry of recruiters approaching you. So in terms of job hunt, you can apply to jobs directly. There are a lot of job boards. I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn. Every company that I know either post their jobs on their websites or they post them on LinkedIn. I don't really see people posting anywhere else, but also outside of LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, BioSpace, Kelly Scientific, there are a lot of journals like Nature and Science. They do ads for different positions. So definitely look them up. You can look at, you can ask for referrals. So as you start to network with people within your space, you will start to connect with multiple people. And so once you start becoming friends with them, you can always ask them like, hey, do you know if there's a position available within your company or within your networks that you've heard of? If you haven't heard of it, can you keep me in mind? Here's my resume. Do it through a referral process. Obviously, approach recruiters. You can look at recruitment companies. A lot of recruitment companies are advertising jobs consistently. And if you give a job search on LinkedIn, you will come across their jobs. But if you don't, you can also identify recruitment companies that are good, pass on your resumes to those recruitment companies, either to a specific recruiter or just to their general address and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. This is my resume. This is my cover letter. Would you mind passing it on to the right person? Do that. And follow companies. If you're interested in some cool companies, let's say you have a very niche background. Let's say you work in pulmonary arterial hypertension, and that's specifically your space. And there's not a lot of companies that are doing just lung research, let's say. You probably want to identify those 10 companies that are, and then start following them on LinkedIn, start following them on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, and start connecting with people through that company, make friends with them, and then constantly ask them, like, hey, what do I need to do to join your organization? And set alerts as well, for job alerts and stuff within LinkedIn. You can set alerts to jobs that you're interested in, and LinkedIn is very good about alerting you with things. So, and then obviously the next stage is, you'll get invited for an interview. And so we'll talk about that process a little bit here. So a typical interview process starts off with a phone interview with a TA person or a recruiter. That if the conversation goes well, then you're passed on to the hiring manager. And if the hiring manager likes your resume, then they invite you for a first interview. If all goes well with the first interview, you go either into a second interview with a senior leadership person or into a panel interview directly. And a panel interview would consist of a presentation as well as one-on-one interviews with the people on the team within the company. You then have a wrap-up meeting with either the HR or the TA person, do a little bit of a debrief. The team also debriefs on you. If it all goes well, then they go into reference checks for you. And generally, if a company goes into reference check stages, it's looking very positive. So unless one of your references just, doesn't talk well about you, you're probably getting an offer. And then obviously it goes into offer stages, and then it's la-di-da from there. So a couple of interviews, do's and don'ts. Interview etiquette, right? And this is my last slide before we stop and take questions. Companies are constantly looking for people who are not just technical fits, but also cultural fits. And this is a huge thing within the biotech industry, especially within smaller biotech companies. But in general, it's a big rule of thumb that we don't only need a person who is technically proficient, hits everything on the job description, but then is just not the right person for the team. And often I have found that a person could do the job. There were two people who were kind of similar, but one was technically more proficient and the other person was culturally a better fit, and they've gone for the culturally better fit person. So personality is a big thing. So be well-rounded, be gracious throughout the interview process. Make sure that you're kind of projecting yourself as the best person they could ever hire. A first interview generally, like during the pandemic, obviously everything has gone remote. So it's all happening via videos right now. So let's just talk about it in the way that's happening right now. So a first video interview with the hiring manager is the opportunity to create your first impression. And first impression, believe it or not, it certainly is the last impression. So prepare well. That's my strongest advice to you. Prepare well for the interview. And what I mean by that is research, do your research, do your homework. So go onto the LinkedIn profile of the hiring manager who's interviewing you. Check out their publications, check out like what they're doing, check out the company. What's something new that you could talk about the company in your conversation that could show you that you came prepared into this meeting. Go over your resume and see what within the job description is exactly on your resume, and then tell the hiring manager how your job experience is actually the best for this job because of the job requirements. So again, prepare and sell yourself. I hate to say the word, but like sell yourself for that job. Make sure that you have a clear background. There's nothing too distracting in your background. Wear something formal. It doesn't have to be a suit and tie, but just like a nice button-down shirt. Show up early to the conversation. I think it's the smallest thing. But I always tell people, if you just show up a couple of minutes early, it's the smallest thing, but leaves the biggest impression on someone. So show up early to the interview. Make sure that you don't have any salary or title related conversations so that's something that, the HR, TA, recruiter kind of taking care of. You want to make sure that this conversation that we have, like half an hour, 45 minutes, all about the science and the culture, how you're going to be fits for each other. Have a couple of smart questions ready yourself. And my policy with questions generally is make sure that you ask questions that you can't answer yourself through a Google search. Think about that. Let your personality shine through. Don't get into interview mode. Don't get too serious about it and just let it shine. And then you go into panel or on-site interview. With that, the simplest thing is just remember that you're constantly under a microscope and every little behavior is going to be magnified. So you are going to have to be at your strongest, best representation of yourself, because even the tiniest thing is going to trigger into something massive, because they're trying to judge you within a very small period of time. So behaviors do get amplified. So make sure that everything's going well with that. Make sure you're gracious to everyone. And just want to make this a little story here. We really liked a guy who came in for an interview, did extremely well, was an absolute rock star. At the end of the interview, he said something rude to the receptionist and thought he could get away with that. But then the receptionist did tell the panel what happened and the guy did not get the job. So be kind to everyone, be gracious to everyone, write your thank you notes after you're done. And don't leave your salary conversations to the end. This is something that I would highly recommend, because you'll be wasting your time, the company's time, everybody's time. So make sure that you're setting your expectations around salary. And if the recruiter's not asked you that question, make sure you bring it up as well. The last thing I would say, harass is a strong word, but definitely be nice to the recruiters and everyone you meet. Essentially, just remember that you're not paying them to do the job. They're getting paid through other resources. So all they're doing is to try to help you to get the job. And of course, that means that they get paid in return too. But the nicer you are throughout the entire process, the better it will be. So even if a process doesn't work in your favor, be gracious and be nice, because it will come back. If you've been nice, the recruiters will remember you and they will come back to you and they'll try to help you. So just, I think overall, just interview etiquette is just be gracious and nice, and make sure you know that you're being watched constantly. And with that, I think I would love to end the talk.
Thank you so much, Surbhi. That was very insightful talk. I think you covered most of the topics that we are worried about, like how to approach the recruiters, even how to present yourself in the interview and have that confidence. I think that's very important. And we do have few questions, but I'll start maybe with mine. It was from your last slide that you mentioned that you should talk about the salary thing in the first interview itself. So is it fine to do that? I mean, or you should just gauge that how that interview goes, and then at the end you decide that you should ask about it or not?
Yeah, great question. So to reiterate, make sure that you are having your salary conversation with only the recruiter or the TA person and not with the actual hiring manager who's going to be your first video interview. So obviously the person who's screening you before they send you over to the hiring manager, if they should ideally ask you your expectations. But if they don't ask you your expectations, what you can do is at the end of the conversation, just ask them, hey, not to be too forward with this, because I know we're still moving in the process and I don't know if I'll be called for an interview, but so not to be presumptuous, but I would like to know that, do you have an understanding of what the salary range for this position would be? And just ask them what they think. And if you don't know what it is, I think a recruiter is the right person to ask that to. And you can always say, this is one of my first interviews in the industry. I'm still kind of learning how to do this. Would you mind helping me understand what the salary range for a position like this would be?
That's a very nice tactic, I guess. And telling them that you are inexperienced and you don't know about the field and stuff. So I mean, this comes at a very later stage, but initially we have to apply for the jobs actually, and we apply for different kind of jobs, and sometimes don't hear back. And so we have a question from our audience.
Hi, Naveen.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the awesome presentation. It was really nice. And I wanted to be into the quality assurance, and I have, approach to the recruiters like regarding this but somehow the things comes to for me is like they do not, most of the time the recruiter whosoever contact me on their LinkedIn, they just say they do not sponsor, but there are few which they say they will have the sponsorship, but mostly they do not sponsor. So I mean, do you have anything to say on this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you say sponsor, do you mean visa sponsorship?
Yeah, kind of, because I'm on J1, like most of the postdocs are in J1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was on J1 as well. So I was in the same boat. So yeah, right there with you. So I'll break it down for you. So a lot of people who generally companies would try to save their money if they can. Okay, so it's just business, it's nothing, it's not personal, right? But the companies that can afford sponsoring visas are generally the bigger pharma companies. So that's one thing for you to consider, to start thinking about CROs and biopharma companies. Now,
10x Genomics, like one of the recruiter from 10x Genomics, they approached me for the position.
Yeah, and it's a big company too.
Yeah.
What happened with that position?
There was the recruiter, they just asked me a few things. I had a telephonic conversation with her.
Yeah.
And it never gone for the first video interview for any of them. Yeah.
Any of the positions. Yeah. And I think, so here's the thing. Here's a situation I'll give you. Quality assurance is something that a lot of people, even without PhDs, can do. Right? Now, if you're an interviewer, and if you have two people and both of them can do the job, and with one you don't have to do a visa sponsorship, you would probably want to go with that person too. So the reason why PhDs get visa sponsorships generally is because they can do something very niche and unique, which then helps the companies kind of reason why we need to sponsor somebody's visa, if that makes sense. So I know it sounds a little brutal, and it's harsh, I know, and it seems like the end of the world, but I was in the same spot. If you can get out of your visa situation right now, and get onto a green card, let's say, it will open up so many opportunities for you.
So that was my next question. Should I think of getting a GC? I mean, would it be a good investment? Because it really need a lot of money, I guess.
So very good question. I think really, really strong question. If you don't get your GC, what's going to happen?
So, I mean, I just think like most of the time these recruiters just drop my application just because I am on J1.
It's not the recruiters, to be honest with you. Like, their hands are tied. They're not in charge of this. They want to help you. They want to make sure that you can find a job, right? Like, if I had it in my hands, I would make sure everybody gets a job. But like that's not, unfortunately, not the way it works. And I'll probably be out of a job if it was that easy, right? So because you'll all be applying online and you'll all get jobs, right? And then I am redundant. But so it is difficult. The whole reason why my job exists is because it is difficult, and so I can facilitate it for people like you and for companies that need people like you. But I would say that even though a recruiter is interested in you, they probably get to know this visa situation only over a call with you. And then even if they want to try to help you, it's beyond their reason of influence or sort of like zone of influence. Highly recommend, again, like think about the checklist, right? Like if you want to get into quality assurance, really, really want to get into it, think about your checklist. And I think visa is going to be on your checklist, right? So if you can get on a green card, do it because it's worth your investment. It's going to probably take 5,000-6,000 maybe per person. I don't know if you're a family, and maybe 10, 11, 12,000, whatever, right? It's going to be peanuts compared to what you're going to make when you find a job, right? So it's an investment in your future. I'm sure you're a very bright student. You've probably gone on scholarships throughout and not made your parents pay for anything, right? Like, so you've saved all of that money. Invest in your future. And so what I started to do was I realized that, well, my visa is the limiting factor. And it's restricting me from everything I want to do. And it's unfortunate and it's really sad. Like it hurts me.
It's been a year. I'm just trying and everyone says like your CV do not sponsor. So that's a problem. Yeah.
It's hard. I know it and I empathize in it. It generally does hurt me a lot that we're such brilliant people and we're not able to get past that visa point. But you will get to it because you're resilient and you're smart and you will make it work. And and so essentially, the green card process, if you get it through the EB1A, EB2.
I'm just looking for an EB1. Like, I don't want to involve, the professor or the university in this process.
Yeah, exactly. So I got it through the EB1A category and consulted with the lawyers. I paid the lawyers who had 100% success rate. I am not taking any chances with my, visa after all the money that, as a poor postdoc, you save. So we did that, and I made sure that everything was ready. And while all of that was going on, I was constantly thinking about like, what else can I do? What am I going to do after my postdoc is over? Maybe you can start connecting with people, quality assurance, go on conferences where people are quality assurance. You will spend some money, but trust me, all of that is going to be an investment for your future when you're like making bank and you are cashing out like a bandit in a biotech company. You won't even consider these $10,000, $15,000 that you spend in your future because it will help. It'll all come back to you.
Hey, thank you so much for a nice presentation. Just I thought to ask if does it help if you do an industrial postdoc, even if it's possible to do an industrial postdoc, so you know how it works, and just I'm curious and never had an idea about it.
Yeah, there are opportunities available for industry postdocs. I think there's a couple of big pharma. I'm pretty sure Merck does it, but there's a lot of big pharmas that actually encourage industry postdocs. It's again, people who are really smart can get the work done, but they don't probably have to pay the amount that they would pay to a scientist. So it works out for them. So I'm just like giving you the business side of things and being extremely like numbers and data and etc. Right? So yes, they are available. You should definitely try to do it because it will give you that experience while you're figuring out stuff on your end. It will give you that experience to go into that industry and get it done. I have a question though. Why an industry postdoc versus an industry job directly?
Because I'm on J1 visa, and to get a direct job, I'm not so sure, like H1 sponsorship or O1 visa. If I get into industry on J1, it will be easier transition, and also based on my skills, or they may opt for H1 or O1 because it gives them a chance to see my skills or working style, whatever.
Absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. So you essentially want to make sure that you have made your inroads into a
Exactly.
company.
Yeah.
They see you, they like you, you make them fall in love with you. They don't want to let you go, and then they want to sponsor a visa for you. So that's
Yeah.
exactly the spot you want to get to. And companies, as long as you're not an employee for them, they're not worried about the sponsorship of a visa for you. So you could probably go into it, but I would still want to confirm on the visa. I'm unaware of the visa requirements for that, but I'm pretty sure like you can get into companies with a J1 visa and do an industry postdoc. So yeah, good shout. Definitely do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
If I could really just chime in a little bit from, so I just like a brief experience I've had with nonprofit organizations like Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, or, these kind of foundations that also do research. They do take in people on J1 as well. And the experience you will get there would also count like as an industry experience. So your next move in that case might be easier.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that as well, all you need to do is to get your foot in the door somewhere.
Mhm.
Like take that, even if it feels like it's 1/3 of a step and not a full step, it's fine as long as it's like 1/3 of a step outside of what you want to do and towards something that you want to do, right? So yeah, good shout, Ayantika, agree.
Yeah, it's so amazing to see that we are already networking here and getting answers to our questions. We also had some questions from other registrants who were unable to attend this workshop. So I'll just read it out for you, Surbhi. It's on how to make your CV or resume for industry and get it noticed by recruiters. How should one define skills gained during previous job experience while switching into another domain? And it becomes a little daunting for us, like you always mention techniques that we have learned these many techniques in our PhD or postdoc, and then how we are going to apply it to the industry and as specific to the job requirements. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. So resume, I think, it just that is a whole other like workshop. Like visa could be a whole other workshop. Resumes could be a whole other workshop. I did touch upon it a little bit, but with a resume, keep in mind that a recruiter or a TA person looks at probably hundreds of resumes in their day. So what are you going to do to make your resume resonate with the person, right? So when you're so this, it's a multi-layered thing. The first thing I would do is to make sure that your resume is not a 10-page CV. There's a difference between a CV. CV runs long, it can be multiple pages. A resume, not more than 2 pages. Try to make sure that your resume is not more than 2 pages, and make sure that it's not too wordy. I remember that I did this thing for a friend of mine who was finding it very hard to find a job for almost a year. And I looked at they asked me to look at their resume and help out with it. And I looked at their resume, and it was just like running sentences of like what they could do, but like really there's no punch in it. And when I'm looking at a resume, this is insight from a recruiter, I literally have less than 10 seconds to probably screen through it. So 10, maybe 20 seconds is what I would give. So if you're not able to make an impression on me and convince me that this job is your job, like you can do this job, it's a no, it's a pass. So think about that very carefully. So you want to make sure that your resume is smart, it's punchy, and it's short. So those are a couple of things that you need to consider while you're making a resume. Second thing is, don't apply willy-nilly. I know the trend generally, or the feeling generally, is to just apply to any job that comes in front of you, but they're probably going to hire you only for the job that you're best at. because it is competitive. It is certainly very competitive out there. So, and you're again probably competing against people who don't have visa issues, etc. All of that stuff. So make sure that when you're applying for a job, you're thinking it through and you are the best person for the job. And then if you're getting a rejection from multiple places because you haven't applied to the job that was best for you, then don't take it personally. So apply for positions that you think you are going to be the best for and be serious about that application. Make a cover letter, make it specific to the company. Don't waste that opportunity because your thing will just stay there and then it's gone. That opportunity is gone, right? It comes by rarely. So couple of things to consider would be like, resume, short and sweet, punchy, and then spend your tokens sort of in the right way. The other part of the question was if you're transitioning and your skills are something else and you want to transition into something different.
Hey, Surbhi, sorry to interrupt you, but I was wondering, since you're addressing this, I think it's also in line with Naveen wanted to ask about how do I sell myself well? So if you could also touch on that together with what you were about to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great shout. Naveen, I got you, don't worry. So in terms of you want to, like, it's kind of hard to do it because you want to cater yourself to the job. So what I would do is, if I'm applying to a position, I would make my summary kind of align with the position that I'm applying for. And that's like the top of your resume. So you essentially write down why you think you're good for that job in a couple of lines. So you don't have to change your resume too much every time that you're applying for a new position. So like make your summary look good. That's your selling line right there. Like the first 2 or 3 lines on your resume are going to sell you. And that's like probably what the recruiter is also looking at. I would highlight the sections that are relevant to that job. So that could be another strategy that you use when you are looking at a job, and the sections of that job that work really well on your resume, can you highlight those on your resume as well? And then beyond the resume, it's all about you and having that first conversation with the recruiter. Can you impress them enough to get to that next stage? And then it's just a matter of highlighting why you would be a great fit for that company. And again, the better prepared you are for those interviews, the better you will be as the better your chances will be in getting hired for that position. So I would say that's kind of like selling how you can do the job. Make sure that they want to buy what you're trying to sell is important, because if you're selling something to someone who doesn't want to buy it, it's not going to work.
And just to add to that, Surbhi, maybe we can link a story to that or an experience, like if there is a requirement of teamwork or leadership, maybe you can say that, oh, I mentored some students, or I manage stakeholders like collaborators and everything. So if we link a story or our experience with that particular requirement, I think that will help the recruiters understand that, yes, we actually had that experience.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a good shout, especially because there's this, like I mentioned, there's a lot of personality hires that happen. So as long as you're able to tell people that you're not just skills on your resume, you are something beyond that as well. A lot of people are constantly looking for people who are well-rounded. Let's say you play a sport and you've done extremely well in that sport. That's something that I would consider always is a good, it's going to be a good cultural hire, because that person understands team spirit, that person knows how to do leadership work, who knows how to work collaboratively. If you do volunteer work, outside of your regular work. That's again shows that you care about the world. You are doing something beyond your 9 to 5 job, so to speak. So as well-rounded as you can be, but just that's, I think, life advice in general to, do stuff outside of your work that gives you fulfillment and shows that you are going to be a valuable asset to a company or to an organization that you join. So I think that's just good life advice, Pragya.
We have another question from people who had registered, and I personally also resonate a lot with this one. So, like we all are in the academia, dying to escape the clutches of academia and making a move to the other side. But sometimes, I just feel that I hope this doesn't turn out to be a case of grass is greener on the other side. And once I make a move to the industry, I realize, oh, I was probably a better fit in the academia. So what do you have to say about, this transitioning back to the academia? How easy do you think that would be, or how difficult? Or is it like once you cross it, the doors are closed? Which is the case in your opinion?
I don't think once you cross it, the doors are closed. But it does not look really good, because it almost looks like it almost makes you look a little indecisive. And that's something that generally companies and even academics would not really prefer. So again, I think my advice on that would be, forget everything else. Like, just forget what the world thinks, what just go inside and think about it. And I know you already probably know what you want to do. It's just a matter of accepting it and making progress towards it. If you think that you will have regrets, can you think about things that will make you regret it? What are some? Would you mind sharing some thoughts around that, Ayantika? What do you think you might regret or you might lose out on if you leave academia and do not find the opportunity to come back?
Sure. So this actually happened. I was attending a talk by somebody from the industry. She was an R&D scientist in the industry. And there's one thing she pointed out at that point was that, the difference between the two worlds is that in most cases, when you're in the industry, you really can't own the project. It's like it comes, if it works out for the company, great, you pursue it. If not, you have to leave and jump to the next. Whereas in the academia, it's like you are so passionate about this one deep particular area and you get to just work on it for the rest of your career, let's say. Mm-hmm. So she basically made a comment saying, if you are the kind of person who wants to hold on to your project, you're passionate and you want to follow it through, then probably industry is not the place for you. Now, I know there are different roles in the industry, but let's say for those who want to become a scientist in the industry, how would they get a taste of this situation, and how would they know if the situation is really that disappointing, or is it something they can live with eventually?
Yeah, so I think what she's mentioned is not unrealistic and does happen. So I think getting information on everything before you make a decision, I'm very much that person. I need all the information from A, all the information from B, and then I make the decision which direction I want to take. So with industry, the goal is not to publish a paper. The goal is to get a drug out in the market. So when that's the goal, everything is dedicated towards that singular goal. And that would mean probably compromising or sacrificing personal projects, personal ambitions in terms of those projects, and letting go of things that you thought were working great and you were very passionate about it happens, it's not unrealistic, and it's something to really, it's worth considering. But you won't be able to make that decision until you have that information. So you've done the right thing. You've talked to someone who's worked in the industry and worked in academia and like gotten this information. Now, your goal would be to meet someone else who's extremely happy in the industry, and despite this challenge has been very happy doing what they're doing, and then compare what information you get from there. Again, like there's no like pill for this. There's no blue red pill for this, right? Like it is a little bit of trial and error and like learning things on your own. What I would do is just network with as many people, educate yourself as much as possible, and ask the questions to people that are in relevant positions, and decide based on the experiences that they have gone through, and then make that decision within yourself. If you think that having ownership on a project is going to be extremely important to you, then maybe that's not the right job for you. Or that is something that you could also talk with your hiring manager when you are getting on a conversation, going through the interview process. Although in industry, the projects are kind of sort of decided by the trend of the drug development, and that usually happens in biotech companies that are smaller, that need to shift quite a bit. Maybe in bigger pharma, it won't happen so much. You still have ownership over stuff that you do. You will still come in at a certain position, you come in as a scientist. As you progress, you move to senior scientist, you have people under you, you'll take on mentorship duties for those people. So you will be a leader. And the kind of companies that I work with, they expect research associates who are fresh undergrads or just fresh postgrads, like right out of a master's programs, to be leaders in their own right. So if it's about leadership and owning something in that capacity, there's tons of opportunity there. But the end goal, again, is not to publish a paper. The end goal here is to make a drug come out, and whatever you need to do as a company, as a team, you would need to do. So it's not individualistic. It is a very team-based sport.
Thank you, Surbhi.
Thank you again, Surbhi, for chiming in, and to our participants for their wonderful enthusiasm. So maybe if someone who is going to jump into PhD or research or masters, and they have in their mind that they want to go into a industry area, maybe they can join our industry-oriented PhD programs from the audience, which is it possible to directly get an industry job in the US from abroad?
That's a tough one, isn't it? Because there are people who are in the US who are struggling with it, right? It is, if you get your visa sorted and you make it possible. But again, it's going to be something that I haven't seen it in my career. I've heard of it happen for a certain doctor who was in China, who then got a clinical development position, but their experience was very niche, very much needed. So it's not like it's impossible, but it's definitely hard, and the main reason would be a visa restriction. If there's talent within the country that can do that job, then the scope of hiring someone from outside of the country would not be a feasible opportunity for the company.
Thank you, Surbhi. I think this was a wonderful and very informative workshop. I'm sure every single attendee benefited a lot out of this. At least I did, for sure. I have so many follow-up questions, but I guess for the interest of time, I will have to hold myself back. So thank you again for conducting this workshop. I would like to let our audience know that if you want to reach out to Surbhi, you can connect with her on LinkedIn. I'm sure, she'll be happy to answer your questions, but just be mindful of her time, and she will eventually get to your questions. But again, be mindful of her time.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Ayanta, Pragya, Vikram, Virender. Thank you, everyone, Biopatrika, for making this possible. And hope to connect with you all soon.